Hey, it's John with The Conversation That Matters for January 2018. Wanted to share some thoughts on the new Star Wars movie, The Last Jedi. My wife and I saw it the other night, so I'm a little late to this conversation since it's been out for over a month. But nonetheless, as I was sitting there, I had some thoughts that I thought were worth sharing. So hopefully you get something out of this and you find it, at the very least, stimulating intellectually. I want to really title this or make the theme of this video, What Star Wars Says About Us. What Star Wars says about us. Broadly speaking, what does it say about us as Westerners, as Americans, more narrowly focused in the circles I run in? What does it say about conservative evangelicals, Reformed Christians? So let's start with broadly speaking. What does Star Wars say about Western culture? Why is it so popular? Why do we flock to these movies? I think for Westerners, there's been a bit of an angst and I want to say a sense of worry. We look at the way the world is progressing, and it's going awfully fast. Technology is increasing. Modernity is weighing down on us, and we are afraid. We don't want to be part of the machine. We don't want to live in a world in which your chief value is efficiency. We want to know that there's intrinsic worth beyond our productivity. And right now, it's scary, because what we've done is we've thrown out our moral framework that gave us intrinsic worth. We've thrown out Christianity. It's like we went to the dump, we threw out our religious glue that keeps us together and gives us a sense of what life means. And in that box labeled Christianity was a number of things. One of them would be chivalry, for instance. The Me Too movement, I think of from last year and continuing on to this year, values chivalry. Now, it might not be in every way a Christian sense of chivalry, but we're saying, where did chivalry go? Where did being a gentleman go? Well, we threw it out. And now we want it back. We really want it back bad. The problem is the box that we threw it out on, we don't want that box back. We're not willing to open the box that says Christianity on it. We're going to try to find it somewhere else. And I'd like to submit to you, that's why Star Wars is popular. You see in the villain in Star Wars, the First Order, a great example of the world that we fear. It's sleek, it's efficient, there's a chain of command, science is behind it, it's a well-ordered machine, they got all the money, and the stormtroopers are all people, but they're basically numbers, they're robots. And we don't want to become that. That's our nightmare. And the alternative is the Resistance. The Resistance consists of a bunch of scruffy guys that have old uniforms, driving rust buckets with a kind of loose chain of command, and they don't have any money. And we are attracted to that because somehow they always escape the First Order. They seem to pull it off. And we want to live in a world where science and technology are not the determining factor in who wins a fight. We want to know that there's something greater, there's a plan. And the Force offers us that. The Force offers us some sense, an illusion of worth. It says that if you're a farm boy from a planet that no one's heard of, or a girl, in the case of Rey, then you have a purpose. And so it gives you that. And it also says that, hey, there's a plan beyond just what science can override. That science isn't going to be able to crush what that plan is. Now, that plan, it kind of begs the question, because where's the plan? I mean, in a Force, it doesn't make sense if you really start stripping the layers back. But nonetheless, we have the elements, some of those elements that were missing when we threw out the box that said Christianity. Now, we also have the advantage of we don't have to have Christianity back. There's no God that's going to judge good and evil. There's no consummation in which evil is ultimately punished. There's an everlasting battle between good and evil. And there's always going to be some hope that maybe someone who was evil can be good, and maybe someone who's good can now be evil. And there's this switching back and forth. And so we're not maybe even really completely responsible in every way for some of the choices we make. The Force is very deterministic, if you really think about it. And we like that. We like that, there's not quite as much personal responsibility. We like that there's kind of a hope beyond us. We like the fact that we can manipulate our surroundings. The Force offers that. So the Force, even the words used, right? It's called the Jedi religion. That's an old word now, religion. Or the Jedi Knights. I mean, knights are, the epitome of chivalry in the old world. We want some of that back. We just don't want Christianity with it. And that's what Star Wars is giving to us. So that's why I think it's popular in the broad culture. Now, a note about this particular film, The Last Jedi, I think, is way more out there with the Force. I mean, it's direct. You got Luke meditating in a lotus position in transcendental meditation, becoming one with the nirvana. They don't call it that, but that's what it is, the Force. You have him explaining the Force to Rey in terms that I can only say are Buddhism or Eastern mysticism at best. You have a yin-yang looking thing, and there's a room in a tree where there's some books on Jedi religion, and there's a yin-yang on the floor. Even the sign for the resistance seems to be half, almost like a yin-yang looking thing. So there's all sorts of symbolism, Eastern mystical factors to this. And it's an eternal battle. You get the sense at the end, there's a little boy who looks up at the stars, and he has this little ring that has a resistance insignia. And you get the sense this battle will continue on forever. And that's what Star Wars is. It never ends. And it just keeps going. And so for a Christian to look at this, we can recognize it's a fantasy, but we should also recognize this is not taken from a Christian worldview. There can be fantasies like Chronicles of Narnia, Lord of the Rings, that are taken from a very Christian conception of reality. Star Wars is not one of them. And what a lot of Christians say who like Star Wars is that, well, it's just a fantasy, I can ignore those things, or I don't have to take them seriously. Well, I understand that, but why is it that when Lord of the Rings or Chronicles of Narnia comes out, we're all about the symbolism in it that resembles Christianity, we're all about bringing our friends to evangelize them at the movie theater? How come all of a sudden we're so into symbolism when a fantasy that we like comes out that's Christian, but then all of a sudden symbolism doesn't really matter when it comes to Star Wars, it's just a fantasy? I wonder that a little bit. I would submit to you that the reason we go to see these movies, as I just described, is because we want an alternative reality, and this is somehow fulfilling that in us. It's satiating our hunger for the way the world could be, or the way we wish the world would be. It teaches us something about the real world. That's what fantasies do. So I can't take that argument seriously. Fantasies do correspond with reality. There's no such thing as just a fantasy. Now, a lot of Christians I've noticed, and this is, I'm going to be a little critical here, but I'm being critical on myself as well. A lot of Christians who are very concerned about issues such as race relations, social justice, and I know some of this just because I'm friends with them, and I go to a prominent evangelical seminary. A lot of these guys who are very sensitive, I mean, sometimes I wonder, hey man, there's no racism on the McDonald's menu. Like, I'm exaggerating, but I'm saying they'll find it in different places and denounce it as injustice. Somehow Star Wars doesn't register. Star Wars, they'll post things online that are just praiseworthy or critique. But the critiques are not about the Force or any of the Eastern stuff. It's about, well, I didn't like this character, or in science, you can't drop bombs from space, or the narrator, the one that wrote it should have written this into it. Those are the critiques I saw. So my challenge is, if you are a Christian, maybe consider being offended about this, because it is wrong. I actually regret buying the movie tickets I did, realizing how much of an Eastern mystical, force, excuse the pun, that was on the movie. These movies are influential, and I really don't want to support them the more I think about it. So that's why I'm being critical on myself. I've supported this, and I was entertained by it. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you going to the movies. That's not sinful. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to prod you wrong. Is this not also coming from an anti-Christian conception? Is it not against the God that you love? And I want to close with this. I mentioned before that Star Wars is this ongoing battle forever. In the Chronicles of Narnia and Lord of the Rings, there's a consummation. Same thing in the Bible. There's a consummation. There is a time when all our dreams are fulfilled, when it's just beyond what we even can dream, and evil is punished once and for all, and God is vindicated and justified. Well, not that he needs vindication, but he wins in the end, and we love it. Star Wars never has that. It's actually hopeless, if you think about it. It's what's A New Hope about? A New Hope is about, well, we get to fight another day, but you never actually beat the First Order. You never beat the dark side. There will always be forever. That's why Rey and Kylo Ren, they fight, and one can't get the edge over the other because they're equal. And that's what Star Wars offers us. And if I can botch a quote, hopelessness, which I think is what Star Wars is offering, ultimately, I think will lead to fear. And fear will lead to hate, and hate will lead to suffering. So, that's just an observation I had that, is very antithetical to a Christian way of thinking. So consider those things. Maybe if you're convicted, maybe if you're at least going to make online posts about Star Wars, consider mentioning that it has this worldview that you don't agree with and that you're kind of offended by. I mean, I think that alone would be really good. And we have a better hope to offer the world as Christians. Star Wars doesn't actually offer hope, and neither does New Age mysticism or pantheism. Only Jesus Christ. And that's the message that I'm bringing to you, and I think that's the message that Lord of the Rings, and to a much greater extent, C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia brings to you. And those are the fantasies that I would want to support more and hope get made into movies more. So there you go. Have a good day.